Well, we got another nice day here. We're getting ready for the spring planting. We got a little bit of tillage I see to do to this field.
Let's see if I can walk over the corn stalks without wiping out. I'm real good at that. Okay, if you're wondering where we are today, Jim Losinski and I are down here, and we are, what, directly north of Dodge?
A little bit northwest of Dodge, yes.
Okay, and we're out here on land that's owned by the Hesley family. And we're going to look at something today that is kind of special, and it's back here, and this is the old Dodge Pioneer Cemetery. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to talk a little bit about Dodge, you know, why it's here.
No, that's what I said. There's a lot of history. All our small towns are kind of in the same boat. I says the historians are slowly slipping away, and no one's recording it. Dodge is a little bit special because they had two authors come out of Dodge.
Two authors.
Two authors.
Okay.
George Myers and Ron Gillespie.
Okay.
And they wrote two books here about early life in Dodge. George Myers was born in 1910 and grew up here. His grandparents lived right across by that green hill at the foot of that hill over there.
They're in Buffalo County.
He was from Buffalo County, yes. But George did a lot of odd jobs as a child growing up here in Dodge, and he got to talk to a lot of the old timers. He went on to become a police officer here in the city of Winona, and he was well liked and respected by the people there. And when he retired in '75, he decided to make a book about his early life and about the early days of Dodge. So we've got some recordings done of Dodge. He contacted local citizens, people from town and out of town that had already moved away, and gained pictures. But the quality of those was the old mimeograph stuff, remember in school, the smell of the paper?
Yeah,
so the pictures did not turn out as highest quality as they could be, but there was a lot of information that he had gleaned from these elderly people. Fast forward a little bit, and we get up to Ron Gillespie. Ron was born in '33. Through the Depressions, he lived over here by Whistle Pass on Grandma and Grandpa's farm. They kind of brought him out there so that, I better check that date here.
But we don't want to get a wrong date, do we?
Well, okay, yeah, all right, 33.
This is important.
But anyhow, he lived on Grandma and Grandpa's farm during Whistle Pass. And they had told him some things, but they only knew Polish. And he did not know Polish, but he said it did not take long. He learned what no was.
Okay.
But talking to older people, and he had learned some of the history of early life in Dodge and some of the things that happened in Whistle Pass. Ron went on to write two books. He did a Trail of 35, and he revised George's book. He did a revision of George Myers' book. George happened to live 2 houses away from him in Winona. So he and George conversed on, and they kind of re-edited the book. And all the profits from the second one that Ron had just simply named Dodge, Wisconsin, was donated to the fire department here in Dodge. And he had a lot of history.
That was nice.
There was a lot of history, I says here, from the elderly people that were still around. And I said when the first settlers first came to this area, this land was all run by the Winnebago, which were a branch of the Sioux Dakota, and now we call them the Holchuk.
Right.
And they were here. They had some farms here. They had a forge here across the river where they all would cross. The stagecoach used to come through here in the early days.
And Jim and I have had a conversation about trying to find that crossing.
You know, we're still working on that, but we've got a good idea. And there were 3 roads coming into Dodge. One was over Whistle Pass. One was along, like where County P is, just along the west side of the river. And the other came over the bluff, came into the Kaler farm and the Hesley farm on this side. The stagecoach route came into Dodge from that side. So these early settlers came into town, And the railroad didn't come till 1973 or 1873, but that's a different story. We're not going to go there. We're not going to go there. We come here to talk about the cemetery here today.
But Dodge was not incorporated until the railroad came through. Is that correct?
1874. Yeah.
Okay.
First mileage was 1874 at 2 cents a mile to ride the rails.
But there were people living here, it just wasn't incorporated.
Well, the first settlers of Dodge, no one can really say who was actually the first settlers. They have speculation, but there were a lot of speculators. People would come in, they could buy government land at $1.25 an acre, and in a matter of a few years, this land was going for over $20.
Yeah.
There were people coming in here. Whistle Pass, I believe, was
that way.
1856 for settler in Whistle Pass. 55. 56 was John Latch over here in Latch Valley.
Okay.
Everybody knew John Latch for his donation. The son donated all the land for Perot Park and Merrick Park. But living down here along the Stagecoach Road, which is Jefferson Street, where the...
which dead ends now.
It dead ends now, yes. But those were the Kingsleys lived there.
Oh, they did, at the end of Jefferson Street.
On Jefferson.
Okay.
And it wasn't the Casper or... what was his brother?
The Kingsleys?
Yeah, there was
a Jasper and a Casper. No, it was a Jasper, Kingsley, George, and Eliphalet.
Okay. Well, the younger one donated this strip of land for the early cemetery in 1864. But that was 10 years after the parents had settled over here on Jefferson Street. So in those 10 years, those people were buried who knows where or someplace.
Right.
And we're not even sure of all the people that are in this cemetery. We have an idea because George, or Bob Hesley, recalled stories that he had heard, and he related to George Myers, who he knew was resting in here. And there's a list of names, I think you probably have them here, and some Native Americans that have been, we know are here, but who else is in here, can't tell. There's no records, you can't find it. County records weren't required till 1907.
Right.
So this is early days. We're talking, when the first surveyors came through, the Native Americans called the river here the overflowing stream. When you look at the early surveying maps, the surveyors labeled it as a mountain river.
And I think that was what, a takeoff on the name Trempealeau?
I think it's because the river, mouth of the river is next to Trempealeau Mountain.
Right, yeah, that's what I figured.
So that's possibly the reason. I don't know. But there's early survey maps that you can find, and on the maps it tells you that the mountain river ran through here in the floodplains from the mountain river. When it got changed to the Trempealeau River, maybe when the county got set up, I'm not sure. That's got to be a different story because we don't know. But I said a lot of information has been gained by Dodge and here in Dodge, and it's because of the work of George and Ron.
And their books.
Those books, I says, are priceless.
And they're fun to read. They're fun to read.
I don't know if there's any editions of it any place around, or there's ever been a reprint, I doubt. But I says, maybe someday someone will add on to it, because like J.B. Bremer told me the other day, he says, you know, we look at history, he says, 100 years ago, this is something. He says, we're only 4 generations away from that 100 years.
Yeah.
But he says, 4 generations from now, he says, who's recording our history?
Well, that's true.
He said, we're not writing this down. So we're in the same boat. So maybe we have to do a little bit better as not just detectives, but more as recorders also of what we're doing nowadays. But anyhow, like I said, we're here in early Dodge. We're going to look at the cemetery here. It's been reverted to Native American nature prairie here, I guess you'd say, because...
nothing wrong with that.
Well, like I said, it was prairie when these settlers first came here, and it was prairie when the Native Americans were here. The sign here, the stainless steel sign, has been donated by Dave Hesley and Roger Bamnick family. They had the stainless steel set up, and they had the sign made depicting or naming who's in this.
There's a whole list. I know it's probably kind of hard to read with the sun, but there's the names of the people that were here. Eliphalet Kingsley, Mr. and Mrs., I think it was George And there was a Jasper Kingsley, one child, Harry, and this is Sanders Eberseka. Have you ever
Yeah,
heard?
it sounds like it. It's not
Yeah.
a common name around here no more.
Geller. And then Hesley's.
Jasper Hesley has 2 children here,
Yep.
it says.
And then there was, like you say, there were some Ho-Chunks buried here as well.
Yes,
as
but
far
I
as
said
you
the
know.
exact number, no one knows because, like I said, it's been so many years ago, and the records, even in the modern cemeteries nowadays, you go back into the cemetery records, then they're not very complete. When I did Pine Creek
Wow.
Cemetery, there's a stone on the hill dated 1866, and the earliest church records are 1869. So there were people underneath them little lilac bushes in everybody's yard. There was a reason for that. The family plots you still do find.
Well, and I suppose, you know, when you moved into a new area like this and you were establishing a new town or settlement, you had, at some point you wanted a place where you could bury people.
Yeah, so you can't hardly think. Like I said, the first burial in Pine Creek was 69, but the first settlers were in 1850. So nobody went 15 to 20 years and not someone didn't pass
Without
away.
somebody dying, right,
So
right.
they had to put them someplace.
Yeah, yeah.
But then there was that little church out in Whistle Pass.
Right,
but,
yep.
that's a different story. We're not
No,
there.
that's a good
We're
story.
not. We're not there.
But I can see here are what people around here call those old ditch lilies that come up, you know, the
Yes.
orange ones.
Yes.
And that usually indicates that somebody
Burial.
planted them.
Yes.
So let's just duck in here and see what there is to see. Now, I don't see any tombstones sticking up.
No, I don't believe there were any markers here. If they were, they probably were wooden, and they've long deteriorated away, you know, or whatever. Or else they could have even been just small stone markers, which have been overgrown over the
Sure.
years.
Yeah.
You take just a 16th of dust in a year, you add 100 years, it's already down quite a distance.
Yeah.
So I says,
So there aren't any stones here, are there?
not
That you
that
know
I
of?
know of. No. That's why the sign was placed out front, because we don't know
Yeah.
even Williamsburg out there, we're not sure how many people are buried in that little Williamsburg
Yeah.
cemetery, because there's no records on the early cemeteries from these small towns.
So you
There's-
wonder, has it ever been burnt off that you know of?
I'm not sure.
Because
Like I
sometimes
said,
you find things then. you
It was
know.
Kingsley's at one time, then it was, who owned it after that? And there's a list of people that owned this.
I thought it said there was a Moga that had
Oh,
had.
that was the last one, I remember.
okay.
Ralph.
That some of this property had been donated by a Moga. Raphael Moga.
See,
that-
it was a Kingsley farm, then it was a Simpsons farm, then it was a Radomskis, then it was the Ralph Moga, and now it's part of the Hesley family. And every one of the families have left this alone. It's respected as a cemetery, as a natural prairie, and they're going to leave it that way. And I said, that's the right thing to do.
Now, I had been out here, but it was a long time ago when I was still working for NRCS, and we had come out here to do some surveying or something. But you know, at that time the ditch lilies were growing up, and we could see that this was where that cemetery was. But that was quite a while ago. And
Well, like I said, there are lilies growing here. I
Yep.
said, you know, we're just probably got killed by the frost last night. But I said,
well, they're pretty hardy.
there is some plant life here. But I
Yeah.
said, even like in the Trempealeau Catholic Cemetery, the old cemetery on 11th Street, there's a gentleman buried in the unconsecrated part of the cemetery. Well, where is that?
Yeah.
We have no idea. You know, so I said the same thing here. I said, wherever they were laid to rest and how many were laid to rest, that's part of history that's
Yeah.
lost. Because nobody's documented. How many times it said document, document, document?
But it was, now these Kingsleys, they lived at the end of Jefferson Street. You said, weren't they connected to Whistle Pass too? Was there-
Not that I know of.
No, okay.
Not that
thought
I
there
know of.
was. Okay.
But I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Never say never.
Did Dodge ever have a church?
No, not to my
Okay.
knowledge.
So they went over the hill to
They
church.
went over the hill to St. Wenceslaus at the time.
Right.
And then it
okay.
got changed to Sacred Heart.
Okay. So they had to have some kind of a burial ground. And I had read the dimensions, too, of what had gotten donated here.
Approximately 150 by 50, something like
It said donated 10 rods wide by 3 rods. I'm not sure how big a rod is.
16 feet,
Okay,
16 and a half.
okay. So does that seem about right?
Well, maybe it should be a little bit more fenced off than what is fenced off here, but yeah.
And then there was a family by the name of Sonnenberg that were buried
Yes, they
here.
were here early too, and that was some left-handed relation to Herman Scholz, right?
Okay,
And Herman Scholz was the father of Art and Elmer. Art Scholz started the AG Creamery. Elmer worked in La Crosse Creamery down in La Crosse for a number of years, bought out the Dodge Creamery later, and they operated the Dodge Creamery.
okay.
Herman Scholz was adopted, and he moved his adopted father, stepfather, and one of their children were moved over to Bourse Valley.
Okay.
Out of this
Yeah.
cemetery,
They
they
were
were
here, then
exhumed
they got moved
and moved over there.
west, okay.
But that's a Buffalo County story, so we can't go there. It's a different story.
Jim is always tantalizing us with these little stories that we can't talk about now, you know, because
That's a different story.
we don't want to get off track here, do we?
One thing at a time.
Now, I want to know, the people around Dodge and Pine Creek, they were from a different part of Poland than the people by Independence. Is that correct?
They probably were from the correct part of Poland. The
Oh.
other people were from the...
From the incorrect part. That might not be good. You might have people hunting us down.
I have no idea. Yeah, there was upper or lower part, or whatever you want to call it. Some were part of Prussia, some were part of Poland. And that country, Europe, has been so divided up and torn apart. And where these people came from, you know, you got to go back into genealogy and start studying that stuff. That's a different story. We're not going
But
there.
they spoke a different sounding Polish.
Yes, they do.
I was told.
Yes, they do.
That-
I and the wife are different. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
But,
Was
but I
she-
still understand no, like I
Okay.
said.
So your name, Losinski, is that associated with these Polish or the ones by Independence?
These.
Okay.
Independence is different.
Okay. So there were 2 different sets there.
But I can't speak one word of Polish.
Not one, huh? Oh, okay.
The only time folks use Polish is like they always did for everybody else. When you weren't supposed to hear something,
Right. When they
then-
didn't want you to understand, and that's
then they
when.
made sure that they used a different language. Otherwise, it was going out. That interesting thing, like when we had the old county schools, the old township schools, I said the children would come in September, and they were Norwegian, they were Polish, they were German, whatever the nationality is. And by Christmas, they all knew English.
Yeah. Kids pick it up fast.
You know,
Yeah.
and yet we have people nowadays that have been here a number of years and they're still struggling trying to pick up
Yeah.
the language, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they learned faster, and they did school different. They did school as a 2-part series because you had spring and fall work.
Right.
So you had an early, and then you had to do school later.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll have to do something on the CCs. Then we'll learn some more about that, but that's a different story.
My mother, when she went to school, to run-room school, you know, she said there were kids that would start first grade not, you know, just speaking Norwegian or something. But she said they learn really fast.
Well, they had to. They went. They
Yeah.
told them that they were supposed to only speak English,
Right.
so you could learn faster. And they used it at recess, and the elders taught the younger, you know, which helped,
Yeah.
you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the neat thing about young kids. Their brains are like sponges at a certain point there. They can pick up all kinds of languages.
Even stuff you ain't supposed to, they
Right,
pick it up.
yeah, that's the way it goes. Do you ever remember seeing any markers in here?
No.
Never, huh?
But see, I'm not a resident of Dodge. I just know of Dodge.
Yeah.
As we grew up, everybody was related to somebody in Dodge, just about everybody was relation. But I said, I'm not related to anyone. Well, a little bit maybe to the Hesleys. But outside of that, I says, I don't know anything about this early part of the cemetery. I says, we're just lucky, I said, that George Myers and Ron recorded as much of the
Yeah,
history that they could.
yeah.
And every township should do that. Every town should do that. The early history is, we're only 4 generations probably have gone from those great-great-grandfathers, and already we can't remember.
Yeah.
We don't know. The questions have come and gone.
So that Kingsley family, I tried looking them up on some of those genealogy sites, and I could follow them for a little while. And there was something unusual. There was a George Kinsley, and then there was another George Kinsley, a younger one, but he was on the Ho-Chunk tribal rolls. Apparently, his father had married a Ho-Chunk lady.
There was a vote Tech or something. Yeah, there's one buried in Trempealeau, a Kingsley, and I believe he has 4 children. He was married to a Native American. It was one of the first or only recorded, I guess, Native American marriages. But
Yeah, so as far as you know, are there any relatives to the Kingsleys around here?
not to my knowledge.
No,
I said, you can go out and find a grave and you can look at a lot. It's only what's been recorded, but
Yeah.
by the same extent, the names aren't very common. You'll find stuff Connecticut or someplace way off. You know, a lot of the early people that are resting here doesn't appear to be relation. You go into cemeteries, there's Ball, B-A-L-L. There's no such a people, but there's stones in Galesville from Balls. I said, well, I never heard of these people, but like I said, it wasn't recorded, so people don't know.
So what do you think that Dodge looked like physically when this place was just getting, you know, laid out and everything? How would it...
That's a different story. You're going to have to
No,
go
it
into the
isn't.
early history of Dodge now.
I always like to think about what it probably, how different it maybe looked at one time, you know, when they first got here.
Dodge was a thriving metropolis. Dodge had everything. It had a sawmill, it had a bank, it had a creamery, it had a feed mill. It was self-sufficient. Dodge was a hot spot. The stage would come from Fountain City over the hill, came to Dodge. You got a new set of horses over here. There were 16 horses in the Schlag house there in the stables. They would change. There were 3 different stage routes that came through here. The stage out of La Crosse ran to Fountain City 3 times a week. They came up through Elma. They came through Dodge because there was no Highway 35.
Right.
You had to come over Whistle Pass and then go back down P. There was no shortcut from Centerville to Winona.
No.
So
Because
I said,
that would have been going through the marsh. Yeah.
So it had to be changed. I said the old log road down where the buffalo used to go past, Vic Pulaski's down through there were literally logs laid down, then road put on top. That's how they maintained the road.
Yeah.
Now they try to dig out the muck to get to a hard pan, you know. Well, maybe the logs were the right way to go because they were sealed, they never rotted. So that's what held the road up for many, many years.
So we've talked about there being a ford at the end of Jefferson Street, but and it's on the old maps more or less.
Well, yes and no. See, when the road came from Fountain City, it came along the west side of the river, but then when it got to that green point there, it went that direction. It went away from Dodge, and it cut over to Hermie Hesley's silo, or farm, which is a little silo. You can just see the peak of it.
Right,
it didn't come by the river. So someplace between there and that green point has to be a way to get across the river to Jefferson Street. But when the railroad came through, they took a bunch of fill from by the tower, they hauled it down there, and they covered everything on this side of the street. So, and on the other Buffalo County side, you cannot see anything. But I seen comments on computer, Steve Koldunsky, another family from Dodge here, said that's kids. They used to swim in the cattle crossing, which was, he says, the old forge.
Oh.
The old forge, he says. And so, but Steve doesn't live here locally. Rebecca does, but I didn't get a chance to talk to her. But anyhow, I said, so there's a possibility somebody still knows where it is. We still didn't find the keyhole, but it's here somewhere.
Yeah.
I said, there's history that's a little bit hard to glean out of the information we got. And like I said, the old people are not here no more. They're gone.
Yeah.
We're the old people,
Well,
Nancy.
we're the old people now. Yeah, that's the problem,
If
isn't
we
it?
don't write it down, it isn't going to be written down because the history doesn't stay. I said,
But at least we're recording it here.
we're trying.
We're trying.
We're
Yeah.
trying.
Yep. So the other thing that I think people would find real interesting is before the white settlers, there was there were Ho-Chunks living here, correct?
Oh, yes, for many, many years. Like I
Yeah.
said, they were removed with the Treaty of 1837, sent them all to Nebraska. Slowly over the years, they came back. They migrated over here. They worked, my mother remembers them south of Dodge over here. She said we'd lay down, we'd watch them gather reeds and materials for
sure.
making baskets.
Yeah.
You know,
that's
she was
right.
born 1918.
Yeah.
So I says, she says they were here. They were friendly. They lived with the people. They did odd jobs, did trapping and such. They lived at the south end, the Schulze Slough over here, the Dodge Slough, their sportsman club. You know, they camped over there. Many went to public school. Little Cortland Trout Run over
Right,
there.
right.
They went to public school. And the
Yeah.
fun makers, which you can still find today, are some of the last Native Americans that
Yeah.
were right in this area.
Right, right.
You know, But I said, they're still a prevalent family for the Native Americans in Wisconsin. Now they're fun makers. They're pretty popular people.
So you wonder how long there has been human
Oh,
habitation here.
I found arrowheads here already 10,000 years old.
10,000?
Yes, they've been here.
Yeah.
They've been, yeah. Wherever you walk, I said 9 to 10 Native American possibly was there. There's a
Yeah.
good chance.
Yeah.
Because I says they were here for thousands of years.
Right. And they had everything they needed here. They had the river, and they had good farmland.
Like our parents used to say, they used everything but the squeal, you know, and that's kind of the way it was. They knew how to utilize the crops and utilize whatever that the materials that there were. They didn't waste anything, and I said, they survived, they thrived.
Yes.
European disease is what wiped them out. I
That's
said,
what was so terrible.
they had history that they handed down. They told stories
Yeah.
to keep going on. We've lost that tradition. We
Yeah.
also quit playing checkers and cards and started watching TV and doing this here on our phone. So we lost that story where they were handed down.
Yeah, that's about it, and it's really, yeah. Well, things change, I guess you could say, but that is true. I just read a book about Native Americans and how they really emphasized the oral storytelling. They thought that was much better than writing it down, because if written down, it can burn or dissolve. But if you've got that oral tradition and keep it going, that's important.
Yeah, they were the storytellers, I said, and they went on. But like I said, once we brought in diseases come in here,
Yeah.
probably wiped out 90% of the
Yeah.
Native Americans.
Yeah, that's
How many of the historians were gone before the stories
Right.
were learned?
right.
You know, they're gone, you know. So now they can speculate, they can kind of do some work, but I says, the history's gone. Just like here.
Yeah.
I says, we can speculate how many people are here, we don't know.
No.
But I says, it is the final resting place of some of the earliest settlers here in Dodge, which had to be around 1854 and on. And I says, who is here? I said, they'll rest here unknown only to the guy up above, I guess. But I said, there could be some place, maybe somebody has some records. It's on TV, maybe somebody will have some records.
Yes, if you have the burial records for the Dodge Pioneer
Somebody
Cemetery,
they
let
might
us know.
have some history. Williamsburg is another one.
Yeah.
Little Williamsburg between Arcadian Independence,
Yeah.
last burial 1900. Very few records or mentions of that cemetery any place, you know.
So there haven't been any recent burials here.
No,
No. They aren't selling lots or anything.
I don't think so. Nobody's ever contacted me if I was interested in buying a piece of property here. No, I says,
But it is a beautiful spot. Oh gosh, it's gorgeous here, you know.
well, I suppose that was allocated because it's right close to this drop-off, so they lost a little bit off the edge of their field, but they straightened the edge of the field off, so it still worked. It was close enough to the city of Dodge, or the little village of Dodge, you know, for you could do the burials yet, because, you
Right,
know, had to
right.
be by horse and buggy,
Yeah.
you know, bring them up here, and it was sandy, so it dug easy. So
Yeah,
you gotta look at
well,
the bright side.
That's something you got to consider.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. So it's not real boggy down here either, is it? I mean, right
No.
where Dodge is, that's fairly
Yeah, they're a little bit above the floodplain, yeah,
Yeah.
but when you get high water, Dodge does have water
yeah.
problems. It does come through, you know.
Yeah.
You know, they called it the overflowing river or stream. There's probably a reason, you know. So there are a lot of lowlands here south of Dodge, so all the way to Trempealeau.
And right here, we're kind of on a little table. It's up a little higher,
Mhm.
isn't it? Yeah. So this was a really good, good place for a burial. They didn't have to worry about things getting washed away.
There you go. It's not
Yeah.
like New Orleans when the whole box floats away.
Yeah, right.
We're okay here.
This is a good place. I know when I was here, gosh, it had to be 20 years ago, I don't remember there being any headstones or anything, or wooden crosses or anything.
No, that's why I said the Bamnick family there and the Hesleys put up that little placard,
Yeah.
because I said there
Yeah.
is no other information here. And I said, once this generation goes, not for the records here done by George and Ron, I says, it's going to be lost.